Good afternoon, everyone. For anyone who's in WA, good morning still, I think. I know we've just ticked over maybe. So thanks everyone for joining our monthly webinar series, Kickstarting again in 2024. Hopefully you all had a great break and are back and fresh. I know here at Transvirtual, we've hit the ground running pretty quickly. I'm sure you're all the same. It's good to have everyone attending. Today's webinar, we'll be running through how you can allocate freight through Transvirtual. So there's a couple of methods we'll take you through. We'll also give you a bit of a sneak peek into some new functionality that's quite handy. Our bulk freight module, which is developing. So without much further ado, a few people still joining, but we'll jump in and we'll keep moving on. Just wanted to remind everyone, we do have a Q&A section in the chat. So if you do want to pop in a question, please pop it in there. We may not be able to answer during the session, but what we'll do is if you have any questions we need to get back to you on, we'll be sure to reach out to you and drop you an email and give you some feedback if you have anything that pops up as you go through. So just coming through, today's session, obviously looking at allocation freight through the TMS system. First thing we're going to look at is automatic allocation of freight. So what this lets you do is if you want to automatically assign pickups or deliveries to individual drivers in your system, you can set up a series of rules so that whenever a bit of freight meets that criteria, consignment, say, goes to a specific suburb or has come from a specific customer, you can allocate that to that driver. Beyond that, we're also going to look at some manual allocation methods too. So you can't automate everything, but what we want to do is give you the options available to make it as easy as possible to allocate freight to your drivers. So first thing we'll run through is the pickup allocation controller, where you can look at how you can pick which driver to pick freight up. We'll also then look at how you can do some bulk action through the consignment screen itself. We'll drill down into individual consignment detail. You can quickly allocate a pickup to a driver from there. And then lastly, we're also going to have a look at our new advanced planner module. So this is targeted at bulk freight. It's part of our bulk freight module, which is coming through as of February. This will help you forward plan your loads better. So you can look at allocating freight to a specific vehicle with a driver and understand your requirements. What is the capacity of that vehicle? Have you allocated enough freight to it? Have you under-allocated or over-allocated? And before your driver gets notified, you're happy with what's actually being sent to them. So we're going to jump over into the system now. We'll jump straight in. If you've got a coffee, just sit back, have a sip, relax, and watch the show, and be sure to pop in any questions as we go through, of course. Perfect. So just kicking us off, when we talk about automatic allocation of freight in the system, we can do this by jumping into our configuration, and under our rules and automation, you can see you have consignment or pickup delivery auto assignment. Jump into this section, really simply, I can set up a number of rules to decide when and how freight is allocated to a driver. So you can see I've got a rule already set up there. What I'm going to do is remove that. We're going to start from fresh. First thing I want to do is just set up a new rule. So just give it a name. For example, it could be if you're assigning to an agent, we might just have agent ABC. And what we're going to do is also assign a priority. Now, when you've set up a number of rules in your system, what the system will do is use this priority to decide which rule it runs first. So the higher the number, the higher the priority is. So if I want this to run first, I might allocate it number 100. Whereas if I'm not too worried, that's actually want to be the last rule we run, we set that to number 1 instead. And then down below, we just decide what type of auto allocation are we looking at. It may be purely for delivery assignment. It could be for pickups only. It could be a combination of both. For deliveries, you can also use the created date as your trigger, but you can also look at expected delivery too. So if you have transit times and maybe some freight is on its way via line haul to another state, you want to make sure that the assignment only occurs as of the expected delivery date. You can set that up as a rule too. You can also use a combination of your pickup assignment and expected delivery date too. So if you've got an agent or a driver that operates in an area that does both pickups and deliveries, you can set up a combination of those as well. To start off simply, what we're going to do is look up pickup assignments. And now that I've created my rule, I can select that. On the right-hand side here, I can see all of my inputs. Quick note for everyone, you'll notice the orange highlight there. That just means that this rule is not enabled yet. So always a good bit of practice. Go through, set your rule up, review all of your settings, make sure you're happy with it before you enable it in the system. Looking at my different configuration options, I can always adjust my name or adjust my priority if I want. The next thing I have is my assigned start and end times. Now, where this can be useful is if you're allocating pickups and you want to make sure that you're not allocating a pickup to your driver at the end of their day when they're about to clock off, you can use these times to make sure you set a time frame for when allocations can be assigned to your driver. So I might say that between the hours of 7 a.m. and 3 p.m., I want allocations to be given to my driver. However, if a booking is made and the pickup time or the booking is made outside of that 3 p.m. time slot, it's made at 4 o'clock, that won't get allocated to the driver till the next day at 7 o'clock when their day starts. This just makes sure you're not overloading your driver with information and not stressing them out and they're suddenly panicking, thinking they have to do extra work when they're about to clock off. Down below, we've got our auto allocation type again. So we've already selected we want pickup assignment only. And then we can pick when does this trigger. So for a pickup, I typically want to assign this at the point of creation. You can see there is a pickup complete. If I was selecting a delivery assignment, I may want to pick that as well so that when the pickup's complete, the system then goes and processes the assignment of that as well. So for our pickup, though, I'm just going to select creation date. You can see down below, you do have a few other options as well. So if you do have line haul process that you need to take into account, you can utilize line haul scanning tags to actually trigger that at certain points as well. We'll keep it simple though. The next thing we're going to go down and say, well, who is this going to? Who are we going to assign these pickups to? So I can pick by source. I can look at employees or agents. For this instance, I'm going to assign to an agent and I want it to go to stalking my agent there. Firstly, we're just going to update and we've essentially set the first part of this rule up. Now what we're going to do is go down and decide under what conditions should this rule trigger for this agent and assign to them for pickups. The first thing we might want to look at is the area. So I might say, for example, this agent operates anywhere in Western Australia for me. I'll say my sender state. I'm going to set that to WA. And really simply now that whenever we have a consignment booked that has a pickup requirement and the sender state is listed as Western Australia, the system will say, okay, we're actually going to assign it to stalking for you. So that pickup will go and be assigned to them automatically through the system really easily. Now you can set up these rules. You can drill down, use a varying number of factors. So it could be specific customers that trigger your pickup requirements and allocation. It could also be service levels, for example. It could be whether there's dangerous goods. You can have a look through that list and it's quite comprehensive. You may also use suburbs, for example, or postcodes to trigger that. One other element you can use to control this will also be your auto allocation zone list. So if I jump into configuration and go over to the zone directory, I can see I've got my typical head ports, pricing zones. I also have an auto assignment zone. And what I can do from here is set up particular areas, whether it's a list of suburbs or postcodes, it could be an area on the map. And I can create a zone based off that and then say, when I go to actually use my auto allocation rule, say if a pickup falls in this zone, assign the pickup to that driver. So it works exactly the same as your pricing zones. If I go and hit edit zone suburbs, I can set up the different zone names and I can either define that using a series of postcodes or really simply I can draw on the map. And you can see here, it's a little bit hard to see that green color, but I've essentially picked a very large area. I called it Perth, but it's a fair bit bigger than that. But effectively, whenever I have a pickup from a location within this area, I can tell the system, hey, make sure that whenever the sending assignment zone is Perth, assign it to my driver too. So I can have both of those combinations as a fail-safe. I may want to remove that. I can also add an or statement here to say, if either of these conditions are met, assign to this driver. So that's nice and simple. Once I've done that, I can basically turn this rule on, hit update, and now this is live. So any new consignments booked through the system that meet that criteria, the pickup allocation will go to that driver for me. Now, lastly, you'll notice as I hit to update on that, we had this little box appear that says check rules against existing consignments and pickups. What this lets me do is reprocess the rules over any consignments that haven't been allocated yet. And we can check this against our new rules we set up. So if I just created this rule, but I had an assignment sitting there that's due to be picked up from Perth, that was booked this morning before I made the rule. I select that, that'll run through over and reallocate to that driver. The only difference will be is it'll check for ones that are unallocated yet, so it won't allocate and reallocate one that's already been sent to a driver for you. But a nice little method just to make sure you catch out any. So just coming back, you can go and add as many rules as you want. As I mentioned before, your priority will really drive the order in which these run. So making sure that you want your pickups to be at the top of the list, for example, and as you go down, your deliveries. Now you can also look to do combinations. So if you did want to set that, these guys are always doing pickups and deliveries in the air, you can set that up. Or you may set up individual rules for pickups and deliveries, depending on your preference there. So we do have a help article that runs through this in further detail, but that's just a nice, simple introduction to your auto allocation rules. You can see if you wanted to get really, really strong in your automation, you can build a series of rules here, set this up, and really minimize the amount of manual allocation needing to be done through the system. So we're going to jump across now. And what we're going to jump into now is some of your manual allocation methods, because obviously you can't automate everything in life. You want to try and do it as much as possible, but ultimately you do have allocation controllers. You have team members who are responsible for allocating freight and dictating where freight should be assigned or where it should be picked up from and by who. So the first thing we're going to look at is our pickup allocation screen here. So this sits below your operational tasks under your transport menu. Now, by default, this screen will show only pickups, so it won't show delivery requirements. However, if you like, you can actually adjust this in your global configuration. If we go to global setup and we scroll down all the way down into our other section, what you can find is down here, and I'm going to use a little tip here. You can search and you can see if I've typed in allocation here, I can see my pickup allocation. And I can say include deliveries as part of this too. So if you do need to look at assigning deliveries and pickups via this screen, you can simply toggle this on. For now, we're just going to leave that off though and focus on just our pickups. So we're going to jump back in there. And from this screen, I can essentially look at any consignments for a date range or that are currently active in my system that require a pickup. So just a couple of quick tips here. You've got a few filtering options up the top row here. So if you want to look at specific booking dates, you can do so. So if you're trying to look forward ahead of time or just purely look at today, you can set your just show current. You can say, I don't need to worry about tomorrow's bookings or beyond tomorrow either. And you can also show allocated ones as well. So if you're just trying to get a feel for what's gone on in the past, you can have a quick look there too. To control what columns are visible on this screen, you've got the little bookmark icon here. I can select that and then decide what fields are relevant to me that I need to see in this little area here. So I can go and add additional fields. It may be booking times. It could be checking for creation dates, specific customers as well. Whatever you need to view here, you can basically add it to your screen. And then from there, you can sort as well. So I might be quickly checking to see what's going to Penrith. I can go and filter that nice and easily. As with your other screens in Transvirtual, such as your consignment screen, you do have the ability to set up permanent filters as well. So if you are a state depot manager and you just want to look at deliveries for your state or for your area, you can use that. And you might be using things like your receiver state as a filter, and you can set a permanent filter to make sure you don't need to type in every time. You can simply load up your predefined filter and hide those items that aren't relevant to you. So having a look through consignment screen, any red items are essentially ones that are due to be picked up today. The booking date is today or earlier. As we expand out, you'll see any consignments that are not due yet, you'll see in white there. You may also notice if you see a dark red icon on your screen, that's typically reflecting a VIP customer, so there's some urgency there. And then if we're looking at allocated freight, you can see green is delivered, whereas that orange color or amber color is in transit currently, so that it's underway. So when I'm looking to allocate freight, when I select a consignment, I can view some basic details. When I want to understand a bit more about the pickup, I can quickly have a look through here. I can send a note to my driver. So if I do want to add some special instructions to my driver there for them to view via the mobile app, that's where I can add in a little note there by double clicking. Say, for example, someone's just called up and wants to make an adjustment to that booking and they say, well, we forgot to tell you what date it's going to be ready. I can quickly jump in and say, they've told me it's ready from 6 a.m. My driver will see that. And if it is a point-to-point delivery as well, you can adjust that from there. Coming down the list, now that I know what we're picking up and where we're going to, we can have a look at our drivers. And I can see a list of all of my drivers. On the right-hand side of each driver, I can see how many pickups are assigned to them at the moment and deliveries. I can also look at my agents list as well. So if we need to outsource this and assign to agents in our system, we can have a look and assign to them too. So really quickly as well, if my driver has GPS enabled and they're going about and completing deliveries, I can see their current location on the map too. So I can just get a feel for how far away from these locations are they. So you can see there, we've got a few dots on the map. I can understand, are they far away? Is it going to take them long? And as we scan through and look at the different deliveries, we can see how far away from the area they are. So from here, to allocate to my driver, it's really simple. I can just select the checkbox next to the consignment and I can select my driver there. If I click their name, the system will give me a little prompt, say, would you like to assign this to them? And I can say yes. That's now assigned and off my plate. And what I can do is if I need to do this in bulk, maybe I'm happy to just assign everything. I can go and select George again and assign that all over to George. Now from my driver's end, as he's in the mobile app through the delivery screen, George will be receiving a pop-up notification advising that they've received a new pickup. They can review the details of those pickups. From their screen, they can also reorganize their route and they can make sure that they're using our route optimization tool to make sure that they're completing the pickups along the way in the shortest distance possible. So that's our pickup allocation controller screen. If you were to look at deliveries as well as part of that and you've gone and turned on that global configuration setting, you can effectively do the same thing by assigning to the driver. You are essentially then also just able to assign deliveries to drivers manually through this process as well. So now that we've gone through those methods, what we'll do is just cover off a couple of more unorthodox methods. Now, typically we'd recommend using the auto allocation, your pickup allocation screen to allocate pickups. You can also utilize your consignment screen here though. So from here, I might be looking to just say any created consignments. And you can see here, I've also got a pickup required field. So I'm going to say any consignments that are created. What I can say is select these in bulk. And from the left-hand side of my screen, we call this here at Transvirtual the hamburger panel. You might have a few other names for it, but these three lines here, if you click this is your bulk consignment actions. From here, I could look at doing things like printing out consignments or printing the labels of all of these. More importantly, though, down the bottom, I can pick an employee to assign these to, or I can pick an agent to as well. So it's just another method to assign consignments to a driver from here. And then lastly, what I can also do is look at individual consignments. And when you have a pickup required against the individual consignment, you can immediately assign to a driver. Or again, if you click your drop-down menu, you can pick an agent to assign to instead. So from here, as soon as I select this will go and assign to that driver. They'll get the notification that they need to complete a pickup and they can action accordingly. And sorry, Edwin, you've just posted a question here. So for planning reasons, can you allocate a pickup and delivery to an area, say a metro area, and then reallocate to a driver that is allocated for that day's delivery? There are some creative ways you can do that. What we'd recommend is probably best to reach out to our support team to get some help with some configuration for that. It's not as such as to allocate to an area and then individually assign a driver, but what you could do is have a series of allocations using the priorities. And so what you could do is basically say that at a certain point in time, when a consignment reaches a certain stage, maybe it's scanned as depot in, what that means is you could then actually reallocate that to another driver too. So there's a few methods there. I'd recommend just contacting our support team with your query and your standard process, and we can help you align to that very well. Perfect. So from here, we've just run through the allocations, and everything we just went through is aimed at doing allocations on a given day. So it's ad hoc on the day you've received a consignment, you want to get it to your driver straight away. What a lot of our Transvirtual customer base have said to us is that there's been a need for some future planning. So if you're looking to do a run to a regional area that you may only do once a week, or even if you've got a large amount of freight that needs to go out, you need to prioritize what freight is given to a driver if you can't fit it all in the vehicle. We've looked to build a module through the screen to allow you to do that and plan before it's actually assigned to a driver. And this is our bulk freight module. So for anyone who subscribes to our newsletter, you've probably heard us talk about it 100 times. A few of you may also be part of our bulk freight planner beta program as well. So you're testing out some functionality at the moment. What we'll do is quickly run through this module and show you how you can plan your freight a little bit more ahead of time instead of just having to do things immediately. So jumping down, I've got my planning dashboard here. So this is a new module that's available for anyone who opts in. From here, I can view very similar layout to my pickup allocation screen. You can see here on the left-hand side. But over on the right-hand side, what I have the ability to do is create loads. So I can create a load. It may be going from between my depots, so from my head office through up to my Brisbane depot, and I can assign a vehicle to that load as well as a driver and a few other constraints. And then what we can do is actually allocate freight to that vehicle. So the first thing I want to do is just give a name to this. So I'm going to say this is going from Eunora to Brisbane. And I'm also just going to give it a load reference number. That's a unique number that just helps me track it through the system. So for filtering purposes, if I want to make it easy to find this run later on, I can actually select my destination and departure location. So this is just a generic to and from tag. This won't have any effect on the system as such. It's simply to help me filter my results later on in the process. What I do need to do though is say what vehicle do I intend to use for this. So I'm going to pick my heavy rigid taut liner. And then if I do have trailers I need to attach, I can do so as well. So just assign trailers to it. I can then also pick a departure date. So this is due to leave tomorrow, and we expect it to arrive the next day on the 20th. Lastly, I can pick which driver or agent is going to be doing this run for me. So I'm going to select a driver. Now, the big difference between what you're seeing here and the pickup allocation screen and any allocations we saw before, when I create this load, this is not going to immediately affect the driver. We're currently in a planning stage here. So this is basically allowing me to do a two-step process where I can create my load, I can assign my vehicle and my driver, and then I can determine how much freight or what freight goes and gets assigned to that vehicle and driver, and then release it to them once I'm happy with the results. So for anyone with sharp eyes, you'll notice just below, once we've created that load, because I've selected vehicle, I'm now getting an available weight and available cubic as part of that. And as part of this module, what we've added is against each vehicle, you can actually set capacity now as well. So going into my screen, if I go into my taut liner here, I've got a new tab showing compartments. And what this lets me do is give the platform the capacity from both a weight and volume perspective. So I can say that this vehicle can fit a maximum of 23 tons, and I cannot exceed 19 cubic meters of freight when I'm allocating to it. We do have some other basic tags which won't affect the allocation of freight, but you can set up and just little tags in the system. And as we further develop this, these will be additional criteria you can add in. So now I know this vehicle has a capacity of 23 tons and a volume of 19 cubic meters that I can allocate freight to. What I can also do is set up licensing requirements against the vehicle too. So in the system, I can create a number of different licenses and then say for each vehicle, what is the license requirement? When you have a driver, you can assign any valid licenses to them. And then that way you can make sure that if you've got a large group of drivers, a large number of vehicles, varying licensing, anyone going to do allocation understands what driver can drive which vehicle. And those license requirements are just easily set up against your staff file. So if I go into a staff member, I can have a look under their driver details and I can see the license that's been applied to them too. So these licenses aren't hard-coded into the system. They're essentially a new configuration you can set up, and you can go and create as many different license types you want in the system. These could also relate to qualifications. And for each license, you can also set up any other license subtype. So for example, to have a heavy rigid, you also need to have a Class C and a light rigid. You can set those up to make sure that those requirements are met. So coming all the way back to our planning dashboard, from here, now that I've set up my load, I know what vehicle and driver are associated with that. I now can start to look at what freight I want to allocate and make sure that I'm not over allocating or under allocating freight to these. So again, in the same way we used our pickup allocation controller to filter through results, I might be looking at specific suburbs. I might be looking at, booking times, requirements, maybe even customers, or I might even be wanting to allocate the heaviest items first. So to allocate to my load, I can select my consignments. I hit assign to load. And from here now, it's going to show me an item level view. So for each consignment, I can see any of the items. I can actually reduce them though, just to see it holistically. And I can assign to that vehicle. So straight away, I've over allocated my freight here. So I've gone way over on my cubic and the system's letting me know that we've got an issue. To review this, I can simply expand my consignments again. I can see all of the weight in cubic. And if I pop out for more details, I can decide, do I need to remove some items here? So straight away, this consignment here looks to be the problem. What I can do is remove it entirely. So every item under that will go. Or if I want to, I might say, well, I still want to send at least a few of these across. I'm just going to allocate the first 5 items as part of that consignment. And we're still over, so I've got to go back. No luck, Will. Let's remove some more. That's it. We're just going to save that. We're going to have to figure out another plan of attack, and we're going to take off that consignment too. So now I'm under my cubic requirement. I'm well under my weight requirement, and I can also just see what's the expected revenue from this as well. When it comes to that revenue, it's basically looking at your consignment value, and if you do have some costings, if you're assigning to an agent as part of this, your margin will also be reflected too. So you can see if you've set up your agent costs as a rate under your agent rate cards, you can then see the margin you're making on that, and making sure you're assigning the right value of freight to an agent so that you're making money on that trip still. So good little method. And as you can see here, we can play around with this. We can play the what if game a little bit more and make sure we're happy with what we're assigning to a driver before they actually see it and need to action it. So at this point in time, I can see any allocated or unallocated freight too. So I can actually just roll through. If I need to create additional loads, maybe we decide we need to do 2 runs up to Brisbane, we can do so as well. So I can jump in and just go and create more. And then from this view, if I ever need to refer to it, I can look at any loads created here. You can see I've done a pretty bad job. So I've really gone over my cubic on all of the loads I've created. So a bit of a problem for me I need to look at. But up the top here, if I want to filter my search results, I can look at departure dates. I can also use that departure location. So I just want to see what's going out of Yennora. I can plug that in and just have a quick look. So they're just a couple of easy filters there, making sure that I'm not seeing information I don't need to see. Now, once I am happy with this, what I can do is actually close off this load here. That's essentially locking it. So the same way you might lock an invoice or protect a consignment from being adjusted after it's been delivered, you can control this and just make sure no additional freight's allocated to this unless you go and actually unclose that and then reassign. Now, the last step, once we have closed off a load, is we can then decide to release to a driver. So what this helps you do is you can forward plan a bit better. From here, if I want to plan a load for next week or a series of runs, I can actually forward plan that. Maybe I'm getting calls from customers telling me that I'm going to need to do a run for them in a month's time. I can prepare for that, get a feel for it. The consignments in the system, I've prepared my vehicle. I know that vehicle's in use that day. My driver's going to be using that. I've got a lot more visibility here, but from my driver's perspective, they're not seeing anything on their screen. If there's changes, they're not worried. As far as they're concerned, they're able to focus on their day-to-day. But from a planning perspective, we're the wheel's in motion. We're understanding what our capacity is, what demand is for any future dates. And it's a great tool just for making life easier for your planners and making sure you're not having to work as ad hoc and getting you away from those spreadsheets, which a lot of you have told us you're stuck relying on. We want to pull you away from that as much as possible. So Glenn, has meant just a question in our chat. Does the VIP customer flag show anywhere else in any of these screens? It will appear in certain screens. What I'll do is include a reference to that as part of our summary, just all the screens where you can see the customer VIP. It does appear in most allocation screens, as well as you can view that from some consignment screens. There's also some ways you can use it for allocation as well. So if you need to make sure that you're prioritizing VIP customers, there's some ways you can do that through the system. So as part of our summary email that everyone will get who's registered, you'll get a recording of this webinar. You'll also get some feedback, and that'll be one of those bits of feedback. Perfect. So everyone, that's a quick snapshot of our bulk planning module. We've run through all the different allocation methods. You can obviously continue to go down and further into the rabbit hole. Ultimately, what you want to do is figure out what process is best for you through the system. For anyone that did find that bulk module, that advanced planner that we just went through, quite useful or can see some value in it, we do have a couple of spots available as part of our beta program. What that means is you'll have early access to this module. This is available at the moment to beta testers. You'll be able to have a play around with the module for no charge. You'll be able to have a test about, align it to your process, make sure that you're happy with it, and you can also influence our development. So we're gathering feedback at the moment. Any of our beta testers are able to give us feedback as to functionality they like, improvements they'd like to see made, and it helps influence our development further. This module will be available for our wider customer base as of the 1st of February. It is a paid module. If you would like to reach out and discuss this further, we can align a one-on-one demo. Also, we can give you some pricing if you'd like to get a feel for it. Please do reach out to me. You'll have my details after this as we send out the recording, obviously. You can also just email support@transvirtual.com with any questions, and I'll make sure it gets through to the right people. So everyone, we'll leave it there for now. Just want to say thank you, everyone, for your time. I know January is pretty busy. Everyone's ramping up, trying to catch up from the holiday period. So I appreciate you taking the time. Do reach out to support. The best contact is support@transvirtual.com with any questions. Thank you, everyone, for your questions as well in the chat. And do reach out to us if you need anything to follow up on. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and we'll speak soon.